Sorry about the tardy start. We were in executive session, and we met in executive session in the town manager's office for the item stated, Jen. I'd like to open the meeting of February 4th. We'll start with announcements. This meeting is being broadcast on local cable TV and recorded for rebroadcast on local cable channels and on the internet. February 13th, 2019 at 4 p.m. the town meeting articles requests are due at the Board of Selectmen's office. Mill Pond Winter Carnival is this upcoming Sunday, February 10th, 2019 from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. We're all welcome. Come on down, have some hamburgers, some hot dogs. If you watch them rescue me out of Mill Pond and a water rescue, and but I have to preface that we might not do it because of the weather. It's going to be almost close to 60 tomorrow. It was 50 something today. There is no snow, and we're going to get rain, I think, on Wednesday night, Thursday, into Friday. And it looks like it's going to be kind of near freezing over the weekend, but it might not be safe to be able to conduct it. So keep an eye on our website. We will announce it if it is canceled.
Can we just point out what you're talking about the entire event, okay?
Correct.
Not just the ice rescue.
Oh, I'm sorry, the whole event. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get people down there. But, you know.
The big draw.
There you go. Black Tie Gala celebration is Saturday, February 23rd from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. at the Groveland Fairways. There are some tickets left. Please buy them as soon as you can. The Bicentennial Committee is buying a block of tickets for the Red Sox Day at Fenway Park for August 9th. Red Sox Day, that will be West Newbury's Red Sox Day. West Newbury will be on at Fenway Park that day. 2019. If interested, please contact the committee via their email at wnbirthday@wnewbury.org. The West Newbury birthday party and birthday cake contest is February 24th from 2 to 6 at the Pawtucket Middle School. And 2019 volunteer opportunities are still available. We have some committee openings, so please check online. And if you have any questions, please call us about the commitment and or what committees are all about. Please give the Selectmen's office a call, and you can see those openings at www.wnewbury.org. Joe?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm announcing tonight that I will not be seeking a third term on the Board of Selectmen. As many of you know, my wife has chronic COPD and other health-related issues. Her health has declined this past year, so between a very full-time job, the 10 to 15 or more hours per week I put in as a selectman, and then my increased time as a caregiver with household duties, on top of that, something has to give, so that's my announcement.
Well, that's, we found out a little bit earlier, so it really honestly hasn't sunken in with me yet, but all I would like to say is obviously, you know, your family is the most important thing in life, and I hope everything goes well, and that this board has done good, great things together, and has taken this town into new and exciting places, and you've been a huge part of that, and I don't know if we could have done it without you. I just want to thank you, and I hope everything works out well.
Thank you.
I completely want to second what Glenn just said.
Okay. Application for appointment. Phillips Robinson to the Energy Advisory Committee. Are you here tonight, sir? Why don't you come on up? And if you could for us, come sit. And then if you could push that little button that says push on it, and that red circle will turn green, and then your mic will be on. Perfect. If you could hold it closer to your mouth, that'd be great.
I'm not sure if it's on.
No,
It's
no,
it's
no,
on.
You got,
It's
you're
on.
good. Don't, just slide it,
You actually did
just
really
slide
well.
it closer. That's all.
So, we have your application. I think we ask people that we don't know, or it's not for reappointment, to come in, talk to us, just to get to know them a little bit and see if you have any questions of us. But
Usually, yeah. Just give us a brief thumbnail about yourself and why you're interested in the committee.
Okay, so I grew up in West Newbury, on Main Street down by way of the river. I graduated from Pentucket in 2014, and I just graduated from the University of Rhode Island in May. My degree was in environmental and natural resource economics, so it has to do a lot with energy and microgrids and a lot of what the committee is working on right now, from what I've seen. So really, I just found out that you were looking for more people to join. It seemed like a great opportunity to volunteer and also learn a lot.
You seem like a great fit. You're hired.
Ditto.
okay, that's
And I assume Liz and Rick have explained the committee and the time commitment.
I wasn't able to make the last meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a general idea. If you could tell me anything more, that'd be great.
I mean, they could probably be the best. Yeah, I mean, I think they meet like monthly.
Rick, you need to block off at least maybe 2 to 2.5 hours.
Okay.
Or you could call Liz.
Yeah.
It's just
So
kind of an inside joke, you know.
You would-
When he's at a meeting, he's only in 15 minutes, and an hour later we say, "Okay, Rick, your 15 minutes is up."
All right.
So I move to appoint Phillips Robinson to the Energy Advisory Committee for a term ending June 30th, 2019. That's when all the terms end.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. If you have any other questions or concerns, if not, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
There you go.
Aye.
There are some things you need to do, like get sworn in. You have to take the ethics thing. So if you have any questions,
Mary will email you all the information.
yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
You for volunteering.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is another appointment of Paul McDowell to Mill Pond. Paul, you want to come up, please? The alternate member. So kind of the same thing. We ask people to come in. You know, you've been on it before, I think, and it's up for reappointment. So
Sure, yep.
Tell
Holly
us.
McDowell, grew up in West Newbury. I was on Mill Pond Committee for several years. I let it lapse while I was sort of getting kids through high school until they got their license, and I found myself with lots of time now. So I'm reinvigorated to be involved, and I've been going to the meetings. Not really, I had to fill out another application and get reappointed. So.
okay, any questions? Joe?
No.
Roger? No?
I move to appoint Polly McDowell as the alternate to the, or associate member of the Mill Pond Committee for a term ending June 30th, 2019.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions, concerns? None? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. So the same thing, just
Yep.
talk to Mary. There are some things that you have to do. Take an ethics test that the state requires, or the meeting wants stuff. and then it's one.
Okay. All right. Thank you so
very
much. Thank you.
B, discussion with the finance committee regarding the FY20 budget calendar and board and committee roles.
Mr. Roberts.
Good evening, everyone. Coming just for you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I don't know if I'd use the term growing pains, but you know, this is obviously a transition year for the town manager and our committee. So, you know, both while having what I feel is a great relationship to date, I feel like both his office and our committee have had some confusion or maybe some initial struggles in figuring out process and responsibilities moving forward in the budget. And really, as a committee, we were kind of hoping that we could get that clarified before we get too deep involved in this, and in the interest of maintaining our positive relationship. And we also have a couple of date conflicts, which we can also work on.
So process and roles.
Well, prior to his arrival and after the completion of the previous budget, I reached out to Selectman Anderson about our role and how it would change. And at that time, he indicated to me that the role of the Finance Committee would not be changed. So then, throughout the period in which we've interacted with Angus in his role as a town manager, there have been periods in which he said to us as a committee that your function is completely different. And then that's caused me to step back and speak to Joe and say, have I missed something when I spoke with you? Is this completely different? What are our responsibilities? And, throughout this, we've had a very positive working relationship, but I don't want to do anything that we're not supposed to do or not do things that we are supposed to do. Simply here to try to get a clarification of what our role is, when we should do it, and how you folks, as the policy setting board in the community, would like us to handle it.
So let me start, if that's okay. So let's talk about what does change and what doesn't change. At least, and I'm just speaking for me, and these guys can chime in. Obviously, we have a change because we have a town manager versus a finance director. So Angus has the responsibility as the town manager to create the budget, just as the finance director did. And that's the budget that will be vetted by you guys, discussed by all of us at some point in March, and hopefully we'll have the same kind of dialogue we've had in previous years, that you have a question or comment or whatever, and we kind of have interim discussion, if you will, not waiting to the end of March. And then that's the budget that the legislation does change, that we formally vote that a budget, whether it's a modified budget or if it's the budget, whatever it is, and that's the budget that goes to town meeting. Now, what doesn't change, in my opinion, at least, is the Finance Committee's role, and the Finance Committee's role is to vet the budget, to talk with people, ask questions that you ask, recommend changes. So when I say it doesn't change, that's what I'm talking about. So I don't really think the role of the Finance Committee changes demonstrably or much at all.
In terms of recommending changes to the budget, so we don't directly make changes to the budget. Can we adjust, if he presents a budget to us, is it within our purview to make adjustments to that budget?
Well, it's the town manager's budget, so I think in the past, what we've done is we've all talked, like in here. So I think that's the process, at least in my head.
So is it yes, the Finance Committee makes changes to the budget, they do not, or they, in collaboration with the Board of Selectmen, make changes to the budget, or they're not involved in that at all?
Well,
I'd say
I
it's
think
a collaboration.
It's always been a three-headed monster, you might say. Before the finance director sort of put out the first draft, the Board of Selectmen at periods put their 2 cents in. The Finance Committee went more thoroughly, obviously, went through each line item or warrant article, and I think it was very rare in my experience in doing it for quite a while that we ever got to the point where at the end where there was a very much of a discrepancy or any between the three parties.
That's
in
true.
other words, it was always collegial that say when I was on the Finance Committee, we would have a problem with the I don't know, pick any budget, the Conservation Commission budget, and just as an example, and just everyone would usually through discussion, we all pretty much all would agree that okay, that's what we're going to present to the voters. I don't think we ever had one that showed that this was the Finance Committee's budget, this was the Finance Director's budget, and this was what the Board of Selectmen recommended. It was maybe like one or two items in over the course of 15 years that I can think of that we ever were not ultimately in accord. So,
Right.
I don't know. I just wanted to continue to be a cordial, accommodating relationship, because everyone contributes and everyone brings something, a different viewpoint to the table. But in the end, I think it's and also I think this is the most important point, is that when it comes to town meeting, okay, I come to town meeting once a year, and I look at the thing and, wait a minute, these people say we should do 25,000, and these people say we should do 38,000, and these people say we should do 11. I don't think that's a good message. I think we all want to ultimately be in agreement on what it is, and the only way we're going to get to that is us all talking together. Okay, I've talked too much.
So I think that's not, are you looking more at the process?
I'm simply trying to be.
One second. No, but, so I want to step back just a couple of seconds. It's not because of Angus that it's changed. The legislation has changed the process for us now, how we're preparing the budget. And now Angus now is our town manager, so he has to follow that process.
Right, and I have no interest whatsoever in tipping over the apple cart. In fact, quite the contrary, the reason I'm here and the reason the committee is here is because, we want to make sure that as supporters of the town manager and the establishment of the position, we do everything that we can to help him fulfill his role. But we simultaneously want to do what we've signed up to do. So he's on occasion told us that he felt our role was different. I've spoken to, Selectman Anderson and other people and said, can you quantify this for me? And he says, this seems to be the same to me. So, I'm getting bits of information from two places.
And we probably should have had this meeting a long time ago.
Maybe we could ask Angus, do you view something?
Folks had his hand up first, though.
Okay, that's fine.
10 seconds.
So hold on, you need to use them, even with that big boisterous voice, you still need to use the microphone. People can't hear you at home.
Well, they might be able to.
Yeah, they might. Close.
It's a little shot from last night's game, though. So I just wanted to, in 10 seconds, point out there was an instance last year with the community center committee budget where there was a differing opinion between the majority of the finance committee. I believe this to be this is what my memory tells me, and the board of selectmen, and it was in and then it went out. It was suggested that it go out and then it ended up being in. Mm-hmm. So it does happen. We do want to be collegial and work together. We just want to be able to.
Yeah, but I think in the end,
in
the end we were on the same page, though. No.
But what I'm hearing, but at the end of the day, it's the FinCom's budget that gets.
No, that changed. That's not.
On town meeting?
That's not the case anymore.
Okay.
That did change. Now we've said that. Now can we ask Angus what he's saying?
So I think everyone's aware. I've been trying to get clarity. I don't want to give conflicting information. The FinCom last Tuesday did say, I think you feel it's incumbent upon both the board and the town council to kind of set out the process that we can all act accordingly. I did ask Mike to prepare for that, so I would invite him to join the table. But I'll say a couple of things. I found from just a few years ago in the budget, in the FinCom booklet, it had several columns. It had the original requested budget, the proposed dollar change, a column for the Board of Selectmen recommend, and a column for the FinCom recommend. This is the format I'm working with now. So in terms of preparing the FY20 budget, I want it to look familiar, and I want it to be clear what came into me, what I'm proposing, where FinCom stands, and where Selectmen stands. I think the question that I continue to have, that I think I know what Mike's answer is, but I want to make sure we're clear, is what is the budget on the floor of town meeting? Because I had understood that it was the Board of Selectmen's budget based on the legislation. Mike has advised, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that the FinCom booklet defines what the motions are, and therefore what the original motion on the floor of town meeting. So if, for instance, for Department X,
yeah, but that's contrary to the legislation.
If the selectmen recommend 200,000 and FinCom recommend 198,000, Mike has said that the FinCom motion would be the motion on the floor. which would then need to be amended. So if that's, Mike, is that?
But that's what I meant when I just said it's the FinCom, that's what I meant by that. That means you have to turn it on underneath first and then hit the push button. Just hold it down for like a second and that goes on.
I got it. In some ways, it hasn't changed that much. I mean, I think that in the last year or so, we've gotten away from it a little bit because the FinCom has had more of a role in the crafting of the budget. And part of that was, and thank you for that, because there was a need to have that to reviewed. But the way the legislation is set out is the idea is that the town manager, with the assistance of the Board of Selectmen, will prepare a budget. And the idea would be, from the town manager's point of view, that's a complete budget. It's ready. That he's vetted it, he's looked at it, he believes that this is in the best interest of the town. Once that's done, then it goes to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee is a committee of town meeting. Since we can't have all town meeting members in a room to discuss everything in an article, we have a select group, the Finance Committee, who act on their behalf to look into it, to research it, to see and understand the budget, so that they can take those recommendations to the town meeting. They are a branch of town meeting. The idea is that then, in accordance with the statute, and this falls in place both with our legislation, with our current bylaw with regard to the submission of the budget, and the state statute that says that it is at the time of town meeting the FinCom kind of presents the budget to the town. So it would work as we have always done it, that the town moderator will read the Finance Committee's recommendation as for each line item as the budget. Now, that may differ from what the selectman, or actually the town manager / selectman's recommendation would be, and then the process would be that if somebody, if individuals on town meeting felt that they wanted the selectman's recommendation for a budget, they would have to ask for hold, and then when that would come up to be reviewed by the town moderator, make a motion to amend it to the selectman's recommendation. Town meeting would then vote on that particular issue. But that's how the process should be, and that's how the process should be historically, and even more now, because in the legislation, it says particularly that the town manager shall prepare the budget, and with the assistance of the selectmen. So what you should get when you meet with the town manager is a finished product, or at least in his mind, it's a finished product, and then you vet it and, add your expertise and your, rationales to, how you would recommend it to the town meeting. Is that?
That's excellent explanation. I think that we all understand. So now, do you have any questions on that?
I don't.
Yeah. Come on.
I'd just like to clarify a question on that.
Yep. I want to get that. Yeah. Get over that, and then we can talk about something new or something else.
So, Mike, if there's something that we disagree with, it's in the budget, and we vote against it, should within our rationales we write, whatever we're writing, this is for this thing, and we're voting against it because whatever. Could we then, within the writing, say we think the amount of money should be this, or
the idea would be, okay, and I'm talking about the omnibus budget here. Line item in the budget.
Yeah.
What would happen is if the majority of the Finance Committee felt that the number presented by the town manager was not the one that they wanted, they would then vote a different number. And as Angus has pointed out in some of our former warrant articles, what they would have is literally the selectmen's, or in this case it would be selectmen town manager's recommendation, and then the Finance Committee's recommendation. And they may differ. The Finance Committee's recommendation would be the motion on the floor.
Okay.
And if someone wanted to change that, they would have to make a motion to amend.
Thank you.
So, Department X, if their expenses were after, when the town manager gave his budget to you, Department X had expenses of $10 after you guys vetted it and looked through it and said, you know what, I think that should be $8. So that would be the one that would be on the floor, because it's the FinCom's recommendations that is the motion. So if you had $8 on there, and then when we said, no, that's not good, somebody would have to put a hold on that. And we'd say, and then we would have to explain to the town meeting, saying, hey, I understand the FinCom is saying that they're recommending $8 in that expense line item, but the selectmen would like to see that to have 10, and these are the reasons why. And you would obviously do the same. Say, no, we think it should be $8, and these are the reasons why we want that line item to be $8. Now that's the omnibus budget. Do you want to talk about the other process too of the warrant articles? Do you have
No,
any questions about
I'm pretty
those?
clear about that. I think we have a date conflict here that put down.
Yes, in the budget calendar, it provides the March 25th is the date scheduled for the joint meeting of the board, the FinCom, the moderator, and so forth. On the calendar that was sent out, it showed March 18th, the prior Monday, being the date of the board's endorsement of a budget. But the FinCom process, the final meeting they have is set for the 19th, the next day. So that was a question of, I think there was concern about the board voting a budget before it had gotten FinCom's recommendation, which I don't think was this board's intent. No. So I think that the question, to paraphrase, I think from last week, is if it's the board's expectation to receive recommendations from FinCom at some prior date, they need, and I need, we all need to know that so that we can.
A prior date, do we maybe need an extra meeting? Or
Maybe if we move it, if we moved it back to the third, was it the 25th, when everything fall into place? I don't recall specifically.
Can we make that
Move
25th and
what
then
back
push
to the
out
25th?
Well, don't they have a meeting on the 18th?
They do.
Yeah, they moved it forward, and we would everything fall into place.
Yeah, I think if the board wasn't intending to vote its recommended budget until the 25th, I think that would.
That's fine. So if you
when do you have to have
that,
everything posted? Because that matters. So then
You'd have to do it by April 9th,
12th.
12th? Well, yeah, because the 9th is, what, a Friday or something like that?
I don't know, it's the date.
Well, we had to do it 20 days prior.
12th is the Friday, that's it.
Okay.
So that gives us plenty of time. So
if you move it to the 25th,
it works.
okay.
We all in agreement?
Fine with me.
So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we good? Thanks guys for coming in. Appreciate it. Next thing on the agenda.
No, I'm good.
Continued discussion of regional agreement, PRSD regional agreement, school committee work on draft contingency plan. B, please come up. I hear everybody call you that. Is that all right?
That is fine, absolutely.
I thought you were gonna say, call me anything you wanna call me.
No,
No?
it's dangerous.
But not like dinner or something. Okay. Welcome.
Thank you, I appreciate being here.
Just, we talked briefly after our joint meeting, the other night, at one, I'm not gonna speak for these gentlemen, but I'm gonna speak for myself. I think it was well attended, well done. Some good questions were asked by people, some hard questions that they were concerned citizens, and there was good questions, every question is good. But I thought it was very productive. And thank you for having it, and I think it was more collaboration with the three towns, and people getting the answers from the horse's mouth rather than on Facebook always helps.
I agree, I really appreciate everybody being here, that meant a lot, thank you, Emily. Everybody in the same spot, hearing the information, factual information, asking some of those questions. That's the kind of dialogue we want to have.
Okay, so why are you here?
So we're here, every 3 years, the regional agreement is supposed to be reviewed. 2014 was the last time that happened. I think you have a copy, some posts. And we talked about that last Thursday, and I know there were suggestions in that regional agreement. One adjustment was section 14 under amendments. letter C. And it was, this committee will be reviewed every 3 years, and the language changed to by a group comprised of the chief financial officer of each town, and then to the recommendation that was made at that meeting, or a person holding such position by whichever title may be known, PRC manager and PRC superintendent. So basically, you would have representation, one person in each town, the chief financial officer, or to question you if we don't have a person in that position, whoever holds that position. And I noticed in the draft, I think this is an important thing just for everyone to understand, that the approval signatures, the chair of the PRC school committee is on. This document is not actually a document that the school committee even touches. This is something that's purely developed by the towns, and that the school committee kind of plays within the rules of whatever is within that document.
And the approving authority is town meeting.
That's correct. And I think that's why there have not been signatures on there in the past, because it's not something that any of the chairs of the boards have signed off on or approved. It's something, but I think having the name, the date on there is important, just so we know.
So how would you legally do that, Mike? Would you do that by having the motions at town meetings say and authorize the chairperson of the Board of Selectmen to sign on behalf of town meeting, or what? How do we get signatures on here, legal signatures?
I mean, what you do is just to vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to,
You mean the motion?
the motion.
Yeah.
The motion would just say, I vote to move to authorize the Board of Selectmen to execute the following changes to the regional agreement as set forth.
Because I think you bring a very valid point. Somebody needs to sign this, but none of us are authorized to sign it unless we're given authorization.
Right, and that's the town meeting votes. So, and then, of course, the important thing is the language has to be set out, and each motion has to be exactly the same in all the three towns.
So in a town meeting, Mike said it's absolutely right. A town meeting can't change language. It's the way it is the way it's written.
Yep.
So we're here, I'm here just to make sure that everyone's okay with this, and we'll send it off to Groveland and Merrimack as well.
What was your amendment recommendation?
It was that,
I know it's because it's not in here, what Glenn said, right? Or it is?
Yeah.
What, it's not in there.
It's,
not in
it's,
there.
it's, so the, Glenn had, it's the section that Justin referred to, so under section 14C, it had referred to the group comprised of the chief financial officer. Glenn had suggested language, and/or Board of Selectmen designee. And so what I've written here is intended to be responsive to that interest, by elaborating on the CFO's responsibility to keep the boards apprised and to provide for additional participation, but it's written to ensure that in any scenario, the chief financial officer remains part of this group. So whether it's broadened, that's fine, but I think the and/or was a concern I had, and also something that the finance director in Groveland raised the same concern, because we need to make sure that we're, that the kind of staff financial officer is part of the group. So the way it's written, it would provide that each person, it would specify that their actions are on behalf of their board. There's an extra word review in there that's a typo, so it should say, each town's chief financial officer shall participate on behalf of their respective Board of Selectmen and shall be responsible to keep their board apprised of communications and related meetings and to provide their respective board regular opportunities to initiate any potential amendments to this agreement or respond to any amendments as may be initiated by others. So it's intended to just elaborate on both the fact that they're participating on behalf of their board and that they've got a responsibility to keep their board apprised.
okay.
So, for the regional agreement, this is not something that this finance advisory group that gets together. I end up actually just kind of making edits and I send it each of the finance directors to consider. The reason why this one came up at all had to do with the contingency portion of it, which I felt was awfully empowering to school committees I believe whoever's in my seat or whoever's in your seat, it shouldn't matter, it should be in our power to, school committee to decide this is what we're doing, don't care what the towns think. Gives the school committee some authority for up to that year, and for the towns to be able to review. That was the main focus of the adjustment.
Second, Angus' comment that get rid of that word review. It doesn't, it's not good grammar, yeah.
Wait, that's not what I suggested, but, I mean, if there are concerns in other towns, I will go along with it, but it's not what I.
So we do try to make sure it's
Yeah,
something is the spirit of what we, I think with the spirit of what you were trying to get at, in a language, there was a lot of back and forth, trying to make sure the language was something that everyone was, right?
So I have a,
Really well understand those. I tried to.
I appreciate that.
so I have a clarity question. At the bottom, second to last sentence on that page, at any time the towns may appoint a task force to review the regional agreement. So what's the mechanism? Does that mean that all 3 towns have to agree to that? 2, any one town? What? It's,
Threshold.
yeah, what's the process?
That's a good question, yeah.
What do you want?
Yeah, sure.
Well, that's kind of what I was, that's kind of where I was headed.
So I would think if this group, if the towns felt like this group wasn't doing what they were supposed to do.
What's this group mean?
So I have the finance advisory group, so each chief financial officer, that they were not doing what they were supposed to do, you could probably task whoever you want to, in each town group to say. Right?
I would either say, just to throw it out, I would say either any single town or 2 towns. I would not say 3 towns. What could request this?
And then one town could be driving the boat.
Okay, then 2. Then make it a majority.
Well, I don't know, but everything's working well.
Well, I mean, now you're getting competing.
So, okay, so back to the original question.
Yeah.
What triggers the task force?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I think it's up to each town. If everyone's, so some of this to me is redundant language, but I don't want to go through that. You know, look, we looked at that to say, let's cut that all out.
I actually think, I don't know if dangerous is the right word, but just that sentence. One town
Right.
might not be happy because something, I don't even know.
Should we just take that section out?
It's reviewed every 3 years anyway. So there is a process to review it for towns to bring their concerns.
Well, how about instead of saying will, make it shall? Will implies, okay, we'll do it, but we didn't. If it says shall, then the line B starts out no amendment shall, but then section C says this agreement will be reviewed, but maybe it should be reviewed. Maybe it's stronger language, the word shall.
So again, this is
That review process could be nothing could change, could be fast, or if a town really has some concerns, that's the time to do it, not halfway through it and throwing everything
Just like
into a-
deliberately, I think maybe, I don't know if this is what Joe was driving at, but maybe one town could deliberately ask for
Yeah, that's
this,
not good.
for this, just
So
to
what about the
create
task-
a monkey, just to throw a monkey wrench into things.
With the task force questions, the task force sentences, I mean, take it out.
So that was gonna be my question. Is that in there? Because another town.
Yeah, where'd that come from?
Yeah,
it was in the original document.
Well, isn't this committee supposed to replace that task force? The committee of CFOs?
And if we.
I mean, if the town's chief financial officer isn't working in the interests of the town, they're gonna lose their job. Yeah.
I'd say take that. Just my own personal opinion.
Sure.
I would take at any time the towns.
I'll take that out, I'll send it to the other towns, I
Angus, what do you think? Angus?
No, I think it's making your life easier too.
I think in practice, I agree, but I guess the counterpoint would be if part of what these amendments are doing is replacing the Regional Finance Advisory Committee, which did include both the selectman and the finance director,
Right.
with a leaner group. So keeping the language in on the task force would explicitly preserve, the option to, if you don't feel that leaner group is getting the job done, you could appoint this task force. I think that leaves unanswered your question about by what mechanism you would appoint the task force. But I think that, I think in terms of needing the vote at 3 town meetings, I think, if it's not a problem, I could see striking it could be seen as a problem if people feel that that's leaving the elected officials without the standing to control your rogue finance directors or managers.
Well, that's the reason why I put my thing in there. That's the reason why I had it. Yeah. So
And
I would say if we get about and/or, the selectman's designee would be fine, and then that gives the control back to the selectman, which should be. But we would want the chief financial officer to be doing it. I don't know.
I guess maybe we don't.
There's things in there in task force. I just see. I don't get happy thoughts when I hear that word. You know what I mean?
I guess we can say though it was there and it hasn't cropped up yet.
So we also have the option, again, this is something that's created by the towns, executed by the towns, but there is the option to go ahead with what's there now. Put the group back together and say, well, can we kind of tease out what exactly it is that this means? But that would be.
No, we get things.
Well, I think that what Justin's saying is the most important thing about all of this is to specifically reference the contingency plan. The retooling of the regional finance group basically came out of trying to recognize that it hasn't happened for all these years, so why not do something that's closer to what's more practical? But I don't think there'd be a lot of concern if the revisions were scaled back just to deal with the contingency plan.
Well, I just see the task force, if we're trying to do things like when we do contracts with employees and so forth, we always just try to make it better every single time. So I think that was a good point about what Joe made about the task force. So if we can get that out and keep those recommendations.
I mean, I agree, but maybe that's gonna make it harder for
It's too much about
Justin to get everyone else on board with it, yeah.
Let me ask, if anyone objects, they'll figure it out, if they see it, we'll keep it in, if not, we'll take it out.
Or maybe try to define it a little bit better. Because it just, to me, it just doesn't.
Right.
Yeah, it's too unknown.
Yeah.
And these things should be just black and white, so we all know. Yeah. Okay. So, without me reading the whole thing, because I was just more concerned with that, let's just talk about everybody have to have town meetings on the same day.
For
the annual town meeting, does it go to that?
That is somewhere.
Is it in there?
Yeah. I don't know if it's in here or,
It's somewhere.
I think it's in here.
Because when I first became a selectman, we didn't have our annual town meetings in 3 towns all on the same day. So
That's right.
we got some recommendations about trying to pass budgets that, things weren't getting passed or things were getting whatever because, well, I'm not showing up or I'm going to vote no because West Newbury already voted no or they voted yes, and it just wasn't a good way to do things. The reason why I bring this up is, again, we finally, as 3 communities, got together and realized it was better if we could have our annual town meeting. We all have our special town meetings in the fall at different times, which is fine. But our annual town meeting to be on the same day. We found that to be more productive for everybody, and everybody agreed. We worked at it and we got it done. But there are people talking about the school building project now that they would like our annual town meeting on a Saturday. People have been talking about that. So what I'm saying is that we work so hard to get everybody to get it on the same day. Let's not start changing the days again for everything, because then it's
Yeah,
There's pros and cons to every day. And, you know, one day is better for somebody else, and they say, it's so clear to me why we should have it on Saturday. And then somebody goes, well, that's ridiculous. No, I work on Saturday, or that's my religious holiday, or my kids have soccer all day, I'm out of town, with whatever, I can't do it. Monday night's perfect for me, whatever. So there's pros and cons on both sides, but I would say that let's not, we work so hard so we could all have it on the same day, let's not start trying to change it, because then we have to, that's another bite of the apple we have to take.
I agree with you completely.
I just wanted to get that because there is a little bit of a push, not a big one, but that's what I've been telling people, that we worked so hard to get it. It wasn't like this.
I forgot about that, but you're right. It wasn't good when they were separate days.
Yeah.
Yeah, April 29th is the date that I've been out there with broadcasting.
No, yeah, no, well, they might even want to refuse, but it's not a good thing, because we work so hard to get them all on the same day. We need to do that. Because our town elections are all around it, and they have to recap it. No. Okay. You all set? You all set?
Yeah,
Anything else?
I don't have, I had no other comments, no.
Angus, do you have anything to this?
Nope.
You all set with me, Cos?
I am, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
We've made your life more difficult.
It's okay.
You don't want us to, you don't ask the questions, you don't, you didn't ask.
Well, I think Angus made one point that we don't have any comments, at least I don't, on the contingency plan. That
No, yeah.
we're all good with that, yeah.
That's the big one. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is correspondence from the Community Center Committee regarding committee members' resignations. I wanted to put this on because I wanted to publicly thank them for all the hard work they've done. I know it's been a hard process. Some days were better than others, but they did a lot of good work, and I want to make sure that they're recognized for that. And I want to make sure that their hard work is not for naught. And that we have it, and hopefully we can strive to something like this in the future. But there's a lot of questions that were answered, that were out there, about what we can, what we can't do over the years, and they got them answered, which was very important. So that's what I wanted to say about that. We just accept it.
Could I just ask it, what happened? Like, I missed, if you had a discussion before about the CCC, I missed it, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So the question from Jen, because you were on the microphone, was, she asked what happened. If we had a discussion previous.
What I heard was, they heard that you guys were gonna put it on the back burner, and they all resigned.
No. I think there's a lot of capital things here, and I think they might have seen that, but no, we never formally said we were going to put that on the back burner, because we never had that discussion in the selectmen's meeting. I mean, they've been going on for a while, and they've done some great things, and maybe they've seen other, I don't know, I honestly can't speak for them, but I hope it doesn't go away, and they've done good work, and we're going to keep it, and it's going to be, that's what's going to be.
But so, do you want me to go to the mic?
Yes. I didn't realize you were going to ask some more questions. That's why I was giving you a break.
Thanks for giving me a break. I'm just wondering if any of the selectmen have an opinion on why the entire committee resigned all at once. If it sounds like you're saying you weren't planning on putting this on the back burner.
We were, we weren't.
You were not.
I don't think we could, I personally can't, yeah. Would you like to wait so you can write it? Well,
No, I got it. Good.
I don't think I can say that, because we haven't formally had that conversation as a board.
We hadn't, a proposal hadn't been brought to us that we could even say yes or no to, so we hadn't even come to that.
So an idea of why they may have all resigned at once. It's not usual for a committee to do that. You would tell me that.
I don't know.
If you want to ask the person who's here.
Unless you'd like to speak, but I don't know.
I'll respond to that,
I don't have.
if that's okay.
Sure, we can use the microphone.
Yes.
Please. And just qualify if you're speaking for yourself or you're speaking for the whole committee, because that's actually important. She could say, oh, you know what I mean by that?
Yep, Vanessa Graham, and I'm not speaking for the whole committee, but the straw that broke the camel's back for me was my conversation with Angus Jennings, where I was told that our project was on the back burner and that it would be several years before the project would be considered.
If I might
Yeah.
simply paraphrase the conversation, you can tell me if I'm remembering it wrong or describing it wrong, but we spoke in early January, and as you know, I provide staff support to the Capital Committee, and I'm working to put together all of the various projects into one place. And as you know, there are some major new costs on the horizon, obviously the school project being one, the Middle Street Bridge being another, and some deferred maintenance of Page School, among other things. So I think the conversation we had, I said that I view this initiative as a capital project. It meets the definitions, and so any proposal to expend funds is going to be viewed in that prism, and it's going to be on the capital program. I think I probably said competing with other projects and other town needs. So based on what I've been hearing over the last several months between FinCom, Capital, this board, not specifically about this project, more generally, based on the increase in the current year's budget compared to last year's budget, based on the school proposal, among other costs, to be, I think I was urging to be realistic about the timeline for a new, a major investment in a town facility is going to be in the context of the townwide capital planning, and is going to be competing with other needs. And, I certainly heard at some FinCom meetings, not specifically about this project, but some downward pressure on the budget that I'm working to prepare. So I was just trying to give Frank advice of kind of what I'm hearing, and I know I was specific, and I know you'll agree with this, that I was very clear that I was speaking based on my own observations, not speaking for anybody, and that, I think I was explicit, that doesn't forestall the possibility that the board or FinCom or whomever may bring forward an article to support something. But from what I was hearing over months of meetings, I just wanted to be realistic in terms of what I saw as an anticipated timeline for an initiative such as this.
Does that answer your question? Yes or no? It's not. Here, hold on for a second. Did you have anything to say? Because I don't want to keep on going back and forth. It seems like speaking great things. We have a lot of capital needs. Maybe they felt that it wasn't a front burner item. I don't know. We've never said that. I don't know.
So I guess my question is, what Angus just said, was that something the board was aware of? Because it sounds like you're saying no. You were just giving them, this committee, your opinion, but it wasn't something that you talked to the board about.
That's correct. Yeah, I talk with a lot of committees, and I try to give.
And what about the issue for seniors who are looking for their senior center? Because that was a big driving force. My understanding of this process was that was a big driving force. That seemed to be like it was a really important thing. There was a lot of urgency about that at the time this was funded, founded, seeded, tasked, and then funded through the town meetings. There's a lot of talk about how the seniors needed their place. So what happens to that? What happens to those folks who,
Well, I think when you say issues and stuff like that, I don't think anybody ever said there were issues. I think this committee was set up to try to hopefully do more things and have a senior set of things, to try to expand what we have. So you're making it sound like our seniors aren't being well served now, which is, I don't think, the case. Nobody's ever told me that. We were trying to have a committee, an exploratory committee, come back and make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen about what we could possibly do to try to make that experience better for them, like we do every day about everything. So I would object with issues and urgency and stuff. I mean, I wish there'd be a lot of things done. I mean, I guess you could use that analogy, it could be analogous to up at Pipe State Hill. People might say the same thing about that, about the urgency, but I didn't think that was urgency. That committee came back and make recommendations about trying to make a situation that, with that, dealing with children and fields and stuff, try to make it better for the town. This is the same task that this committee had. So,
well, I guess what I'm referring to, Glenn, is at the beginning, and I may have been misinterpreting it. My impression was there was a lot of discussion about statistically the graying of the community and the need for more space for seniors compared to what they have right now. I felt there was a lot of discussion about that. I felt they had the Council on Aging director on that committee for a reason, because she had specific expertise in that area.
I served on the committee also.
Right?
Well, of course, if you're going to have a community center for seniors, I would think you'd want to have the director on the committee. You'd be able to.
So was it a community center for seniors? Is that was how you?
Well, no, it was for both. Multi-generational. But you're making it about. I'm trying to answer questions about seniors, and it seems like it's getting grayer and almost like an issue. It was we had kids from Kentucky on there. We had
Right. It was diverse.
So you.
So just
you
so
asked me a specific question about.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but so what it seems like what you're saying to me is, Selectmen never felt there was an urgency to get us a community space for seniors. That was not what this was about. Because that was what I interpreted, and I kind of have a recollection of, and I'll go back and look at the stories I've written, but I have a recollection of that being discussed at town meetings when they were trying to fund the money that was funded for this, and I see that that's included in the packet, right? And I guess you have the money that was funded.
Yes. Yep.
So there was money funded, and I have a recollection of there being discussion at town meeting about the fact that seniors were one key demographic, that it was an issue, a problem you were trying to solve. And if you say, we just don't have the money to do that right now, that's okay. I'm just trying to understand what happened to that.
No. See,
You
I personally didn't see it that way.
And is that how you guys see it, the rest of you guys too?
If somebody's gonna come to town meeting and say, hey, this is a good idea to have that particular multicultural thing, and we see the demographics that are getting older, and we can meet those needs, right? They're gonna give that information at town meeting, but at no time, nobody's gonna say, we have a pressing issue that we see in the next 5 years. We're not going to be able to service our seniors in the way that we want to, so we need to get this done. Did you hear that?
I feel like it did. I honestly have to go back and look at what I wrote, but I feel like there was. I mean, did you have a sense of that?
There's an urgency that we're responding to. We didn't come to you and say we can't meet the needs beyond tomorrow, but we did many times point out that the graying of the population was happening, and we're struggling to. We didn't know a way to meet the projected needs.
So what I would like to see then, that I would get out of this, or maybe have a thing, because you're bringing up a whole new thing, Angus, and we can talk about it, but I would actually then ask Teresa to put something together, if that is the case, and give us projections over the next 2, 5, 10 years or whatever, that if she feels we're not going to be able to meet the services that we presently give. You can't say, well, I would like Newbury Forks one, and that's just, because that's not apples and apples. So if Teresa comes back to us and say, we have a pressing issue that we're not going to be being able to meet the present needs, do what we can do, right? I want to hear that. I was in it. It would be lovely. I would love to do that. be able to offer more, and we see the community's growing.
I think one word to, I think, wanted to expand rather than,
Yeah.
rather than,
Yeah.
No, not plan ahead. Expand is different than plan ahead. Planning ahead would be then, hey, we have a level of services that people seem to be happy. It would really be nice if we could do more. Absolutely. The same way, it'd be nice if we could do more with the fields up there. It'd be nice to do more with parking. It would be nice to do a lot of things, right? But nobody ever said to me, Glenn, we're going to have to do this because our seniors aren't going to be served the same way they're being served now, and that's going to be a problem.
So you haven't heard that, and is it fair to report that all 3 selectmen agree that this project is now on the back burner?
I'm not sure it should be put on the back burner. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't.
I would say no. I don't agree with that. I haven't been given any information, pro, con.
discussed
We haven't.
Except for tonight.
I haven't received anything about it. So no.
So are you going to appoint, should I advertise?
We don't know what we're going to do. You know what we probably need to do? Step back, take a couple of deep breaths, understand what we have and the material that we have, and then, talk to the people that were on the committee, talk to Teresa, and maybe figure it out, rather than just say things tonight about what we're going to do and stuff, and then that stuff maybe not come to fruition, and then all of a sudden people say, well, the selectmen said at the meeting on February 4th that they were going to do this, and then we're going to do that, and then we didn't follow through. So it's probably best just to take this, digest it, take a breath.
It isn't a question of having. I don't have any information. I can't make an intelligent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
You don't have information on that?
The new report. Supposedly there's some kind of a new report or something. I haven't seen any of it. A new plan, or what were the capital? If there's a capital expenditure, I don't planned or would be planned. I don't know what it is.
I think the question.
I haven't seen it.
Which has nothing to do with the lack and or whatever of the committee. Jim's question was, do you feel that way? And we would say, no, we don't have enough information. That doesn't mean that the committee was lax on that. You know what I mean? We prepare for things, and we're not ready to answer that question.
But have you been in touch with the town manager? Because he just articulated very clearly why he thinks it might be realistic to put it on the back burner.
Night, Gary.
That is possible, but we haven't seen it.
Haven't seen what?
Well,
we're trying to. What's your bottom line here? Because it seems to be.
I'm just trying to figure out what happened because the entire committee resigned. And I thought it was a pretty, integral committee to the town. I thought it was something that people were excited about, and now all of a sudden the message is it's on the back burner. And certainly when Angus explains why he might have suggested that, just speaking himself, I can understand what he's saying. But I just am trying to figure out if you've talked to him about that, because you guys don't seem to know what was going on.
That's not true.
Okay.
That's not true. Jen, you asked us. You got a letter of resignation this week.
Mm-hmm.
I put it on the agenda to thank the committee. Mm-hmm. So let us do our homework, and then maybe in a couple of weeks, maybe in a month, you can come back to us and ask those same questions.
Okay.
Glenn, if I might, I don't want to draw this out, but I would object to the characterization of back burner. I think it's more, we have a lot of capital needs, and I think anybody looking at everything side by side would see that, and I know, the present effort that was being made when we had the conversation about 4 weeks ago is to prepare a bid document to invite the engagement of an architect, and so I was working to give input on that. And I gave advice that before something be issued, I thought it be brought to this board to make sure that when it's issued, it's something that is reflective of the direction this board wanted to go. That didn't get to you. I did last week circulate the draft information, but I know I wrote a lot of stuff at you by email, so I don't know if you looked at all that. It has not been on this board's agenda, but that was the advice I'd given in addition to some suggestions on the draft bid document. But I thought the overall kind of design idea, which did, show a elevator lift, it did show a mezzanine level in the annex, and therefore I would definitely characterize as a capital investment. I felt that, this board ought to be consulted before that bid document was put out. So I think that's important context for kind of what's gone on in the last month or so.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Review of known potential Board of Selectmen warrant articles for town meeting. You have any?
Angus.
Angus?
What I know of is in the memo. If there's and not, as it says, not all of these may necessarily come forward. I just wanted to let you know what's kind of brewing in terms of what I see and hear, and then invite any input on what we may be, what you might like us working on in the next couple of weeks before the warrant closes.
Well, I'd just like to go in the negative. We determined the Investment Policy Committee met last week, and the committee felt that they were not ready to make any bylaw changes to how the Investment Policy Committee functions as an advisor to the treasurer collector on town investments. So at this point, status quo. We're not ready to make any. We're not ready to bring it to the town if we ever would. So that one is not going to be on.
Archie, since I'm not on the committee anymore, just to throw something out, if there's some aversion to, and I sense there is, to the committee members taking on that responsibility, maybe more of a hybrid role could work where the committee stays intact as it is, but the treasurer, and maybe she is, I don't know if she came to the meeting, if she takes a more active role with the committee, which previously had been the case.
Well, no, that is actually going to be the case. And to answer your first question, there wasn't. I was concerned that maybe the committee members were reluctant because of the possibility of them being not liability, but a concern about them taking the responsibility for being the so-called financial advisor for the town, and that's not the case. Nobody had that problem. Presently, Cambridge Trust is overseeing the investments, and the people on the committee are evaluating Cambridge Trust performance, and no problem with that at all. And the treasurer collector is going to be an integral member of the committee, coming to the meetings and basically provide, I forget if we formally said quarterly reporting back, but we'll have quarterly meetings, and it seems like it's a good situation now where there's the committee provides sound advice to the treasurer collector, and it's a good hybrid situation sort of already.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. You see more?
I don't have anything currently.
Let's see. Go ahead, Lynn. There's one here.
Yeah, just on his list of ones that, the automatic ones, I think you want to make sure we have the septic loan one in there. Angus, you get that one? for the, and also we have the water, obviously the water department directions that we give every year. And
There's a
I don't know,
CPC article.
the CPC article, yep.
Well, there's two CPs. One is the annual funding, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then they actually have an article for,
Right,
an article.
an article, that's not,
No. Oh, no, that's
Right.
not us, but okay.
but the standard one.
Oh, this is just
But
us,
this
okay.
is the standard ones that we include in every,
We're responsible to put on.
right. And the other one, and for a special, is you want to put on certainly a placeholder for snow and ice.
Do you think there'll be any potential articles for the bridge, street bridge?
Not this year. No.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Did you have anything else?
Nope.
Review of community contract policies, direct cost allocation, want to take the statements?
Sure. So, as you know, back in December, the board and the FinCom met and voted 5 new policies. And since that time, it's been, I think, kind of informal directions been given, which I appreciate, by the way, kind of table some of the others till after town meeting so as not to divert time away from, budget, school project, and so forth. With that said, there have been, a couple of these have been kind of churning along in parallel. The indirect cost allocation policy is something that I think speaks to a need. Basically, it's happened a certain way for a number of years. It seems to work well for the water department and commission, seems to work well for the town, but it's not written down anywhere. So I know last summer when I started and there was a question of, we've got to update the calculations of indirect cost policy, and I had a spreadsheet that I could kind of reverse engineer and kind of understand, but I think getting that policy reduced to writing would be good. And that, as you know, that was one of the policies in the Community Compact report, and it provided, the DOR provided 4 different, widely accepted ways of allocating these costs, and method 3, which is referred to as the estimate of support method, roughly tracked what the town of West Newbury has been doing for years. So in meeting with the water superintendent, it seemed like that was favored to basically codify what we're already doing. So the draft that you have in front of you of the indirect cost allocation policy is in a form that both the Water Commission and myself and the finance staff all find agreeable. So if you see fit to vote it tonight, that's great. If not, we can bring it forward at a future meeting, but I think that's...
If you put the existing numbers in, what happens?
Well, it's not an exact science because the percentages of, say, X percent of the treasurer collector's time is, toward water issues. Those percentages were done by an outside consultant back when they started this method, which I think, Mike, you may know, but like 8 or 10 years ago, a while ago.
Before that.
Okay, so even before that. At that time, they had...
I thought we were like just sort of lining it up to the cost of the fire hydrant. Somehow it always came out exactly the same, which was very amazing.
The hydrant rental is a different thing.
It is.
That's a totally different thing set by statute. This is the indirect cost allocation.
But it did.
But somehow they came out exactly the same.
It seems to me that for the last couple of years, when there's been a lot of turnover with finance directors and accountants, that they've kind of settled the number and then backed into the multipliers to get to that number.
Okay.
So,
That's good.
and, I think for the
No,
FY20
so
budget...
if we put these in, is there going to be a huge discrepancy?
No, because the
then?
policy as written doesn't prescribe what calculation you'd be using. It basically assigns that responsibility to the finance department to keep that spreadsheet updated and to revisit it annually, and to, it also provides a kind of a safety valve if the finance department comes up with a number, presents it to the water commission, and they say, whoa, that's not right. They can then, we tried to articulate a process whereby we can agree to a number. So I think for the FY20 budget, I'm certainly not looking to do anything in any way dramatically different in this regard than what you've seen in prior budgets. But I think that once we have a policy on the books, I think it could lead to a revisiting at some point.
Okay.
What's the policy underneath those numbers? Because I don't know that this board has seen the spreadsheet and all of the different calculations that go into that number.
No.
It's embedded within that. There's a lot of policy questions. I don't think this budget cycle with so much else is the right time to get into all of that, but I think that's something that could happen.
That might engender some, I don't know, conflict, but back and forth between the water commissioners and the town. So maybe at the moment,
So I had a comment that the policies were put on the back burner until after town meeting. I was trying to understand the urgency of this particular one, to do it now.
It's not so much urgent. It's just when we were reviewing all of them this past fall, this was one that actually spoke to kind of there's an existing gap where there is no written policy, but it's been done a certain way for all these years, and it has a real impact because it affects the water ratepayers and it affects the taxpayer. So I think when I was sending this around to different department heads to review the drafts, this was one policy where Mike Lutte and I both said, geez, wouldn't it be better if we had a policy that we were actually doing this under rather than simply doing how it's always been done? Even if the policy is basically codifying how it's always been done.
Okay. But that's a good question. What Joe asked, because
I mean, a lot of policies, you could say the same thing
it was a
about.
good question.
But I haven't.
No, I know, but it was a good question in the sense that we're going to put on that burner, then we're doing them. So you answered the question, but it was in the sense that is there something we're missing? You know what I mean? No,
it's just what I've said. It actually, yeah.
I agree. Okay. And then the next one?
hang on, I had a comment about
We're doing the capital one.
yeah, that's the one I want to talk about.
Okay.
So Glenn and I both attended the capital committee meeting in mid-January, and they flagged just a couple of items of inconsistencies or discrepancies between the capital policy that was voted in December and the capital bylaw. What I've told the capital committee is we're going to continue for this cycle to, the capital committee bylaw is unchanged, and we're going to follow the same process that they've followed in the past. It does create a bit of I'm responsible for preparing the capital program and bringing it forward, and I've been working with department heads on that for several months. So similar to the budget being brought forward by my office, similar the capital program will be brought forward. I see my job as kind of synthesizing what I'm getting from department heads into a single cohesive capital program, which I think is my responsibility under the statute. So it's a little bit different than past years. So what I've recommended here is that we, since we have the capital bylaw is unchanged, that we follow that process this budget cycle, and that perhaps once things slow down after town meeting, to look at whether there might be changes that would be recommended either bylaw or policy.
Am I wrong? I mean, didn't we change the bylaw to 20,000? I know that came up to.
Yeah, we changed the bylaw to 20,000.
We changed it. I remember giving the rationale for it and recommending that the town voted.
Yeah, we changed, that was definitely changed. It's 20,000 now in the bylaw.
I have an outdated version of the bylaw.
Oh, okay, well, okay.
Okay. You you wouldn't know that.
Not about the $20,000.
I spent like an hour yesterday going, I could not find it. But I know the town voted it.
Okay. Anything else on that one?
No, just since the committee had brought that up and asked that it be communicated to the selectmen, it's brought forward in that spirit.
Okay. Policy director regarding potential posting of signage on Mill Pond Ice. That's your threshold? Mill Pond Ice? You've heard enough? Okay, Angus?
The basic question is do we want to post something about skate at your own risk with signage or not? You have in your packet the input of the two chiefs and DPW director. We certainly don't want to get into the business of advising people whether the ice is safe or not safe. The basic question is, do we do more general signage? And I know Mike has an opinion on this as well.
Is there any recommendation our insurance company?
I haven't asked them that.
Give a recommendation?
Probably not.
You know what I mean?
I don't think they would be.
Like what kind of signage you should have, because if somebody fell through and it's whatever, when they try to sue the town, then.
Well, no, they shouldn't be able to, because basically is that since we don't charge a fee for people to be there.
Yeah, they can't sue us anyway.
The state, we have immunity from any type of suit, so.
That's right. Got it.
So, I mean, really, it's more of a question of, do you think it's
Safety.
something that we should advise people to do?
What?
I mean, yeah, exactly.
Okay. I always think that's kind of implied, but I don't think you really need to do that.
I know you might be more worried about it than others, but.
Yeah, exactly. But.
Okay, now I feel better about it. I was just looking out for the town.
No, look, it's funny that you said that, because I was coming back from Newbury with my wife, and she said the exact same thing.
It was.
How can those people be out on that ice?
It wasn't this weekend. It was the previous weekend, and it had been 55 and raining like 24 hours earlier, and there were several people out there on that Saturday, and I'm thinking, I hope those fish are worth it.
Yep.
But I don't know.
So I don't have an opinion. I just wanted to bring it up and see if we're doing the right thing. Yeah.
So I would say that would be a management decision.
Okay. I did happen to talk to Ryan Goodwin. He stopped in the other day on a different matter, and he said he'd defer to the board, but that if given a vote, he would lean in favor of signage.
You would lean in favor of signage?
Yeah.
Okay. Mike, didn't you say that in putting a sign up with a warning that we're implying that we know there is a threat?
Well, I mean, that's the question, you know, I mean, do you then highlight it as knowing it as a hazard and we should prevent people from doing it? I think that in looking at it, is that I feel more confident that the immunity is gonna trump everything anyways.
Okay.
You know, so, but it's really now, so it's not gonna be a legal question of whether it's good or bad, it's now, in my mind, a question of just whether or not you think it's a better thing to do for the town. We have put information on the town website, in which, you know, talks about that, so that we at least get the information out there. Obviously, the police and fire are not going to give opinions, and I wouldn't recommend anyone give opinions as to whether or not it's safe.
And that means, you're making reference to if somebody called dispatch this past Saturday and said, hey, is the ice down? I want to go skating with my kids. Is the ice safe at Mill Pond? I would
hope they don't answer that.
Yeah, that's what you're meaning.
Yeah, says we don't make opinion.
Yeah, it's been cold, yeah, have fun. And then it goes down and they fall in.
Yeah, I mean,
That's not happening.
but
Okay. Whatever you want to do, guys, do it. Sign down there. What all the towns do. That's almost like, we talked about that years ago with swimming too, didn't we? We're gonna put a sign, no swimming. Night. Night, thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, update on application of tenant use of liability insurance, Tula. Anything,
We did get some new information today. Mary spoke with the insurance rep, and she and I both feel that the quote that came in, the pricing seems very high to us, and they had basically provided us a quote that was, inclusive of up to a certain amount of people, and provided for they won't provide an event-specific quote, and so the pricing they're giving is $155 for what they're terming Class 1 private events, which is a private event that does not have alcohol.
Is that per event?
Per event, yeah, so it really seems quite costly, and
that, but there was a threshold of people, then there was another number, right?
yeah, well, the other number was a higher number.
Yeah, if you had like 3 people up to 100 or something was one number, and then after that number, it was even more.
Yeah, it was up to 185 for up to 200 guests with alcohol. So basically, we, after pressing for this for, 5 weeks, we weren't real happy with the proposal we got. So, I think the next step would be to talk to some local insurers and see whether they can give some kind of policy like this. But an important point would be that the town, in my opinion, would need to actually we would need to have a relationship with the insurer, which would provide for these other events to be covered on an additional fee basis. We absolutely are not going to get in the business of recommending to private parties what insurers they work with. I guess we could give a list, something like that, but it's
I see, yeah.
Are we working a little too hard for?
I think.
Are we working a little too hard to try to find it more economical, mainly outside people, non-taxpayers, to be able to use our place for a function?
But it's taxpayers as well. I mean, we get a lot of blowback, really, from virtually everyone who uses the facilities.
Because of the expense of the insurance that we require.
That's right.
And it wasn't like that last year, and it wasn't like that 4 years ago when I did it. And then our answer to it is that, well, we were doing it right, and now we are.
That's right.
So this was the particular vendor that Meyer recommended?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And Maya doesn't do it themselves.
No. No, so I think it's still a work in progress. I mean, right now the policy is.
This is like money for like the Heinz Convention Center.
Yeah, it really, we really felt that this came from someone who hadn't taken the time to really understand
what it is,
the nature of the type of rentals.
I think they're thinking it's way bigger deal than it is.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Next.
So the next issue, the Board of Selectmen policies. When I got here, there were different policies floating around. There was one book, there was one 3-ring binder that had a lot of them in there, but not all of them. And so I've been working to try to get them all under one cover because I'd like to make sure that it's real clear what policies are in effect. And so this past summer, progress was made. Certain policies were repealed or amended to bring them kind of into the present. And so what you have in front of you is a draft of something that attempts to do just that, to take all of the various policies the board's voted over the years and put them under one cover. It does have some specific carve-outs that are not included in this, but for basic Board of Selectmen policies, that's, I would like to get to there, where they're all in one book. And
I just like to say whoever did put all this together, it's a lot of work.
yeah, it's been.
Want to start going through them? What function are we doing? Just to kind of look at.
Well, I do want to point out the OSHA policy, which is on page 7 of the draft. That's the language that I drafted based on what I heard at the last meeting, and I elaborated just a little bit to make it a little more clear. But I do want to make sure that that generally matches what you understood that you voted. I think it does, but that's brand new to you.
These are in existing.
Everything else is existing.
We're going to look at them and put them all together. I think we should start maybe fixing them, because there's a lot of things in here I think we need fixed. I'll give you an example. They start Yeah, like the agenda items, we only make reference to deadlines that 12 noon on Wednesday for the following Monday meeting. I think we need to expand that to what happens if we have a special meeting on Thursday, then the Energy Advisory Committee comes in on Wednesday afternoon and says, no, I need to be on that meeting. I see you having another meeting. So there should be something more than just an assumption that we'll always have meetings on Monday, and then put in there some type of expectation that we need our materials in
So many days
Yeah.
before the meeting.
Exactly.
Business days.
Yeah, the 5-1, the town
What,
shall require.
Glenn, what number are you on?
That 5, page 2. Events requiring police detail, public safety tasks shall require all parties, excluding municipal departments working on public ways or ways in which the public has a right of access to have a police officer on duty in case where the chief on duty, in cases where the chief of police, his designee, or appointed authority deems a potential hazard to safety. What do we consider town shall require all parties? Parties are just individuals. That doesn't make reference to having a party on something, correct?
Correct.
They're just, garden club, riding, driving, and just parties, okay? It just gets weird with the 13, minors. No one under the age of 18 years old shall be appointed to serve on a committee or a board. Well, that community center committee had kids on it from the high school. So that was.
We appointed, I don't think we were aware of this.
Yeah.
Well, and that's exactly what I'm trying to get,
So
you know,
I'm
'cause
just giving you, I'm not telling you anything. So
Right.
what I'm saying to you is, I like the fact that they're all in one location.
Yeah.
I like the fact that you added the new ones. It's excellent. So do you think that? So that's what I was trying. What are we trying to get out of here? Because I can go on and on with these things.
Well, that's kind of where I started, because I knew certain policies of this board were followed and adhered to, and then I would find other policies that were clearly outdated, and so that's where last August we brought forward probably 24 minor revisions that were voted. That was kind of an initial step, kind of a triage, but I want to get to a point where we say what we mean and we mean what we say, and the policies that are on the books are what we follow, and we update them as we need to. But this idea that, there's some that we're kind of treating as, black letter law, and others are kind of, well, we don't really do that. I don't like unwritten rules, and this is not going to happen overnight. This is a kind of a longer term thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to get to where all of our policies and bylaws have integrity, and that we can read what they say, and that's what they mean.
Yeah. Okay, so, but again, we got it all in one place, and you want to give us an update on that, which is good.
Yep.
Now, do you want us to go over and do a little homework and look them over and then make recommendations?
I think where you've just had this 2 days, I think it would be premature to ask for your vote on this, but I appreciate the input, and that it sounds like we're on the right track.
Yeah. I'm glad you
Put them
did,
under one
because
book.
we would have never.
It's great, yeah.
And then there are, as you saw, there are some policies that have been referred
Yeah,
out.
like, I actually think the reserve fund transfer thing is, for example, is not the way it's actually doing number 24. And number 23, I don't understand that one. It's about telephone calls.
Well, a telephone phone.
I'm very happy though, lots of the double polls have been eliminated by the way.
Yeah, 24 is not. But that's when we go through the draft.
Yeah. So let's make it,
That 23 is the one about if they're gonna put, if there's street in the public way, to put telephone poles up, they can just hack those things down, right? And then.
this is to put a new poll up?
And they can't hack the tree down without telling us first. So it could be something, it could be, yeah, remember, the laurel root tree, what is that?
Yeah.
There's some type of.
Scenic tree, scenic tree.
Yeah, shade tree law, or whatever, and they were hacking down a few trees and putting telephone poles up.
So, why don't we like say we'll go through the first 10 we go through 10 a meeting or something? How about doing that?
So, it's funny about number 24, about reserve fund transfer, because that's the way we were doing it. And then we changed it, saying that's not the way we're supposed to do it.
Right, it's the finance committee's.
It's the finance committee's decision.
But we were doing it that way.
I know.
Okay,
Okay, next.
next. Okay, Angus, town manager update stuff?
All right, just a second, I'm just jotting down a note there. So the health insurance opt-out, this has been on the books for the last 3 years, including the current year. It provides for stipend to be paid for employees who are eligible for but do not take the health insurance. And so as I'm preparing the FY20 budget, I just wanted to, the budget I'm working on would budget for this continued policy, but where it was voted with a 3-year term of effect, I just wanted to bring it to you to if you saw that you were not going to provide this benefit next year, I would want to know that.
Okay. Any questions on it?
Nope.
Let's vote on the extension.
Who wants to make a motion?
So are there any changes that need to be made or should be made, or Angus is recommending to be made?
The only substantive change right now, the form provides that both the employer and the employee must fill out this HERD, Health Insurance Responsibility Disclosure Form. There was a change to the statute a few years ago, and that's no longer required of the employee. We still need to do it annually. So we struck in the draft before you, it strikes the language requiring the employee to do it because it's no longer required. Okay. Other than that, it's just updating dates and replacing finance director with town manager.
So somebody want to make a motion, please?
So I move to approve the health insurance opt-out program for the fiscal year 2020 through 2023 as amended.
So you moved and second, and Archie seconded. Any questions? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Next, Angus?
Next item is the update on the Mill Pond Management Plan. You've seen this a number of times. I did get comments, very substantive comments earlier today from the chair of the Open Space Committee on behalf of that committee. So at this point, it's just CONSCOM. And the conservation agent tells me the commission did review this at their December 17th meeting, gave some direction, and we're just waiting to get those comments in writing. So I think we will be ready for the February 19th agenda. There's not a huge urgency other than this housekeeping issue of this paragraph 16, which was never voted by town meeting in 2007. So I think that's part of why I'm trying to keep it on the.
But don't we have to give them, we've been waiting a while.
We've been waiting a while. Yeah.
So we kind of have to give them a drop dead date. We're going forward without them. We'd like to have everybody's comments, but we need to go forward.
Yeah, well, now that I got the open space one, I'm going to build those into a red line draft I've got that has the mill pond. It'll have those, and then I can recirculate that. But it could end up being kind of like these endless feedback loops. So that's where my focus is the paragraph 16, because that's the only one that needs town meeting action.
Next.
Just an informational update, no action required, but you had previously, the Historic Commission Chairman had appeared before you seeking authorization to submit a grant. So you have before you the grant materials. I think they did a really nice job putting all this together. And my office would be happy to do the, assistance with the administration of the grant as we did with the phase 1. Pretty limited role. The committee does a lot of the work on this and hired an outside vendor. I do want to note, you may have noticed that this grant document does anticipate seeking a match from CPC.
So does the match, I tried to read it, but I couldn't tell. Does the match have to come first or second?
Well, so I reached out to Bob last week after getting this to say, I think the window is closed for CPC for this cycle. He said he did hear, he is expecting that CPC will reopen consideration for this annual town meeting. I haven't verified that with Gene.
I'm sorry, I wasn't.
I think Bob Janes is anticipating that
he wants to do
CPC
this.
will
Okay.
get this onto the, which in my opinion, I think they should. I mean, I think the CPC ought to be as kind of doing whatever we can to encourage these kinds of eligible projects.
I don't know how, unless they call a special meeting, they're gonna miss their time window.
Well, that's what I told Bob, but he said,
He said,
anyway,
don't worry.
I don't want to.
He said, don't worry about our time window.
When I saw it, I brought it to him because I wanted to make sure that, because I was at the meeting you were at, Joe. I thought the window had closed.
Hasn't yet, but it does soon.
Yeah, so I'll check with Gene Nelson on that.
Next.
And finally, you'd asked for an update on the page generator status, so you have.
I want to have this like every day.
So the specific question was what equipment within the school will be powered by the generator, so that would include boiler, heat pumps, hot water tanks, refrigerators and freezers, fire alarm system, sprinkler system, and hallway lighting. So it would not be all systems within the building, but it would be enough to keep the power on, to keep heat and limited lighting. So it would be
So the building would not be
habitable, but you couldn't have like a full school day. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
But for instance, if it was needed in the case of an emergency shelter, the DPW directors advised it would support
So
those kind of systems.
Did you say, does the elevator work or not work?
I'm not seeing elevator on his list. Okay.
You might want to find that out specifically.
Yeah.
That could have been left off by mistake. And it's good that he did, just so I can have some next week's agenda. Get into it. That and then, remember that for a while you wanted to know.
I still don't know about the solar field. We'll never.
Okay, anything else? Follow up on assignments, pretty self-explanatory. Placing things on future agenda, Joe?
Nope.
I think you gave us kind of a cheat sheet type of stuff, things that, those you just kind of.
It's not set in stone. When I get something, I put it on the list, whether it's,
Those are dangling participles, those are you're gonna
Well put.
suggestions for next week, but you just want to make sure that we know you haven't forgot about them, and if there's something on there that you'd like us to have, that make recommendations to you, remain.
I think this is good because we think of things and then it's really good.
Okay.
So one question I have that's not on this list, but that did come up at, I believe, 2 meetings ago, was this whole issue of the increase in valuation and the questions that have come in with the tax bills.
Yep.
And I know this board and the FinCom had both asked the assessing department to kind of clarify that.
Yep.
And so I know you've received the written correspondence. Is there an intent to actually invite a representative from assessing to appear before this board, or were you satisfied with the written responses?
Personally, I'm good.
Okay.
I understand the taxes and.
Okay.
Sorry. So my house was built. I was wondering why my address. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my address and go, what's that? But it's on the grant application, obviously. My house says it was built in I thought it was 1884. I want to reserve the right for that. Is that okay? I understand. Probably not, but maybe. But I gotta think about it.
Okay. I did go to the Board of Assessors meeting, the last meeting, and
Okay. Anything else? I have.
Upcoming agendas, I just have to read about basis, that'll be coming up in the next month. In front of you.
okay.
We heard something from the planning board. They reached out to us about proposed changes in some bylaws.
Mm-hmm.
And they're having that meeting tomorrow night?
Correct.
And so they didn't want to come to our meeting. Correct. So,
I'm gonna try and go.
yeah, should we go if we want to make comments, or what would be? tomorrow night's the open meeting, right?
Yes, I mean, they've definitely tried to get the word out as broadly as they could. I know they'd love it to see one or more selectmen. Alternatively, certainly I can get the draft language that's in front of them and email it around to you. I haven't received it, but I could get that, send that around.
That would be great.
Oh, so what they actually say before I get there?
Mhm.
That would be cool.
Be more efficient too than for us.
Right, we could have something to react to.
Yeah, if they're asking, it's hard then to digest it.
I'm gonna try and get through work and go.
What time?
Their meeting begins at, what, is it 7?
7, I think.
Yeah.
And I saw it pinged out to everybody, right? The email tree, if you're on it, I saw that. So, and we have it on our website. Okay. We've done our part. So the things that we have this week, things that we have as selectmen this week is that we make it to the planning board thing tomorrow night, right? And we have to, you're expecting each selectman to have a short list of police chief candidates to you by this Wednesday at close of business, wasn't it?
How do you want,
Oh, yeah, that's.
how do you want that? I did it, but I never did it. How do you want me to do it?
I understand it was a prioritized list of names.
Just name 1, 2, whatever.
And the other thing is dates. Mary, do you have dates for everybody?
I only got them from you.
I don't free most of the time. Joe's always I'm freer than.
I have
Dates for when you can meet.
interviews.
Oh, okay.
No, observe interviews.
So I'm good, I'm always good. Joe's Travis, so I'll go with whatever he wants.
You're good.
Me, twice even. Yeah.
I have them in my office.
You can email them to me, that'd be great, just in case I come up, because it won't be on the weekend, right?
No.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's fine. So I just have a lot coming up on the weekends. All good?
I'm good. I move to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.